All right, so I just finished all 14 books in the Wheel of Time, and let's review all of them. Let's go. Starting off with The Eye of the World, this is a giant Tolkien ripoff. You could just straight up tell me that this was a secret project by J.R.R. Tolkien, and I would have believed you. Lanel Mandragoran, Aragorn. Amurdral, the Nazgul. Caemlyn, Rivendell. There are so many parallels here. It's not like derivative because it's not like going off of it. It's just very much a ripoff of J.R.R. Tolkien. I gotta say this, looking back on it, Rand's character is extremely flat in this book. Like, he's the main character of the whole series, and he is so flat, so bland, there's nothing special about him. Though I will say, the fact that he's kind of more like a teenager in this is amusing. Also, I refuse to believe that he was like 17 or 18 when he started this. He was acting like a 15-year-old in this. And regarding Nynaeve, how the hell did y'all hate Nynaeve? How did you hate her? I loved this woman right from the moment I met her. She's just the big sister, looking after her village idiots. She shows that throughout the whole books. While her romance with Lan is kind of sudden and out of nowhere, I didn't hate it, and I never hated it. I loved it all the way through. I will say, going into Shadar Logoth, I thought was going to be like a more like horror-esque. That was surprisingly more of like a spooky tone, not really horror. And also Matt, I remember Matt in the early books just being like a complete douchebag, and he is, but in here, he just feels like a more like Matt, like Merry and Pippin almost. Aaron's character kind of felt flat, but he gets a pass because he was more of a side character in this, whereas Rand was the main character. Finally, that ending. What the hell was that ending? That was rushed. I don't think it was good. It got the information out of the way and it told us who the Dragon Reborn was. Ooh. But why couldn't you have had like Balsamon or even Moraine or Aginor tell us who the Dragon Reborn was and not God? Because God doesn't show up again. He shows up one time and then just doesn't show up again. Speaking of people who show up one time, that Trolloc who could speak and then just dying like a paragraph later, that got me. That was super funny. Overall, it was a good book, but I don't think this shows off like what the Wheel of Time truly is. It just feels like late 80s fantasy and not the Wheel of Time that it's become to known as now. All right, let's talk about The Great Hunt. You can tell that Robert Jordan is really starting to move away from like the 70s, 80s fantasy feel with this book, especially with the Portal Stone scene with Rand, Loyal, and the other dude. Like, the moment that happened, I was like, wow, he's really starting to expand and get out of his element here, and I love it. I just have to point out something with the POV work, especially with this book and the Shan-Chan, because later in the books, Shan-Chan become the much, much bigger deal. And here they only send out a small fleet, like a small scouting fleet, but later they just send like an entire army to invade the continent. In this book, it feels like there's actually this giant threat, whereas in like book 8, this would have just been like a small skirmish. And like, oh my god, that is amazing POV work. The Aes Sedai finally get expanded upon in this book, and I got some problems with it. I specifically have problems with like the naming convention of mostly the female names in this book because there's so many of them that just sound so similar. And I also have to point out that battle at the end where they're just on the little peninsula and the Shan-Chan are on one and the White Cloaks are on the other. I wish that was portrayed a little bit more chaotically and not like you have a clear idea of what's going on, but rather like you don't know what the fuck is happening. There's just two armies colliding and you don't know what to do. So Matt hit his real low with this book. This dude is such a douche. And also, regarding Elaine's characterization and her introduction here, I think it was good. It felt way too much like the sheltered, naive princess, though. And I also just have to say it, Leandrin, I don't like Leandrin as an antagonist. Lanfear, though, I like that girl. Overall, this was a much big improvement. 9 out of 10. All right, book 3, The Dragon Reborn. Time to talk about it. The fact that this is called The Dragon Reborn and he only shows up in like 5 chapters, I think, was the right move. Because this is a big epic fantasy series and you got a lot of characters. You got to introduce them somehow. And here, I think, was the best choice. Like, I think Perrin and Egwene get the most chapters in this, which was good. And also regarding Rand, like this is the book where you really start to see his mental state slowly start to deteriorate. Because in this book, it feels like his craziness. It sounds crazy now, but like 8 books in, this would just be a regular Tuesday for him. And that's like the best part of Robert Jordan's POV work that I cannot gush more about. It's so well done. I will say that the branching plot lines in this just it's good and they get better, but this one I felt was kind of disjointed. Like Parents' plotline I just found was completely boring. And Fail's introduction in his plotline, I love Fail, but I was not a fan of her introduction as a character. Also, just the introduction of the dream world, like it really expands the world, but I really wish that the dream world and the wolf dream being the same thing would have been made clearer by rather than just some small hints, because it made like one big reveal in one of the later books just come completely out of nowhere if you're not an attention oriented person like me. I will say this is the book that I started to warm up to Matt a little bit, because in the first 2 books I wasn't like the biggest fan of his character, but in this I really started to slowly turn the cheek on him. But I will say the moment where he had that memory of him in a battle and was Robert Jordan trying to tell us that he's going to be like a war hero, I thought that was the biggest fucking ask ever. And then by the end of the series, I big apology to him. Matt Galwin and Galad in that duel, that was like such an amazing scene because it's just these 3 egos going against each other, and the only one we wanted to win was Matt, but just because he's a main character, and the other 2 are just dicks. That's kind of a dick in this book too. But his like Tarvalin gambling spree and him eventually just jumping off a bridge to kill a gray man, that was fun. Now regarding the ending, I gotta say this about the ending. I was not that big of a fan of the actual battle outside of Bilal getting bale fired. Just Moraine just coming out of nowhere and bale firing him. Like, oh my god, that was awesome. One more thing I gotta bring up. I feel like Elaine, Nynaeve, and Egwene getting caught when they know they were gonna go into a trap just it felt way too contrived and way too forced. And Matt hearing about this through what we'll eventually learn to be Ravine, like it felt too contrived. But overall, this was fun. Despite all the things I said, this was fun. 8 out of 10. The Shadow Rising. This is where Robert Jordan like unfurls his wings and just breaks free of all the influences that he had before and just really becomes his own author right here. First thing I got to say, no chapter feels wasted. Like every chapter in here feels like it was done perfectly. It sets up the plot line, it sets up the story, it adds to the world. Like, and even the opening chapter, well, aside from the first chapter, the opening chapter from the prologue that didn't feel like a prologue, chapter 2, that was a really great way of letting us know that the Dark One is getting free. Just have the 3 like chosens, I guess you could call it, all be attacked by their axe, cards, and reflections. That was a really great way of horror. Robert Jordan should have been a horror author, no joke. And regarding that riot that happened like a quarter of the way through the book, that was a fucking tear fest when he was just trying to revive that young girl that he just couldn't because you can't heal death in this series. That was a gut wrencher. Not until Perrin learned about his family's death. That was the real gut punch. And the fact that people in the fandom say that it was the White Cloaks that did it, no, I do not believe that any White Cloak, even Eamon Valda, the most insane White Cloak I've ever seen, would actually do it. The only like minor critique I have is you set up Elaine and Nynaeve's plotline like chapter 17, I think, and then you have it all happen at the almost the end of the book. Why would you just set it up right there and then have this giant chunk of time where nothing happens with them? Now, with the columns, no one talks about that, but that was the best part of this book, in my opinion. Just Rand going through this columns in reverse order and seeing the complete history of the Aiel was completely amazing. I could see why that episode where he went through the columns was like the highest rated in the show. I could see why. That was amazing. It just completely recontextualizes everything that we know about the Aiel. These big, warrior people used to be hippies. Regarding that battle at the end, everyone talks about Perrin's battle. No one talks about Rand and Nynaeve's. Like, Nynaeve's is funny because she just takes what I think is the Adom and just throw it at her. Very funny. And also, Rand versus Osmodian. Like, it's not amazing. It doesn't compare to Emmett's Field, but it's good on its own. Overall, I think this book was fantastic. Best book so far. 10 out of 10. I'm going to be completely honest. This was a big downgrade in my opinion. And maybe it's because I love Shadow Rising so much, but I wasn't the biggest fan of this. Like, this was very slow paced. And the books before were already slow paced, but this was a lot more slower paced. I want to start off with the big problem I have with this. There's two major plot lines. There's the circus, and then there's the Aiel Waste. One of them is good. The other one is absolutely awful. The circus is awful. The Aiel Waste is great. It's just so jarring to go from this amazing plotline of Rand trying to chase the Shido to not invade the Westlands and attack Carrion, and then just jump to the slowest section that's not in the slump. The circus is so slow. It just spends page after page of just juggling, tightrope walking, and all this shit I don't care about. And plus, it's just an introduction of a kind of meh villain in Missima. I don't like Missima as a villain. He's just... I will say one thing about the characters in this book. This is where Rand, like, is actually starting to become more and more crazy. Like, in The Dragon Reborn, he was already kind of going a little crazy, but this is where it's really starting to become apparent to everyone. Matt is really starting to become into the Matt that everyone in the fantasy genre knows. This insane, awesome leader. I will say, the absolute character assassination of Egwene in this book. Like, good lord. It was already on a slow downward hill, but this is where she really hit rock bottom for me. She's already trying to manipulate people. And it's like seeing the childhood in someone's eyes physically go away. So Perrin doesn't show up in this book. That's what I say to that. Now that battle, it was good, but I want to say that the chase at the end of it was even better. Just seeing Rand and seeing his best friend and his love interest Avienda, who, by the way, Avienda, I did not like in this book. Way too annoying. Oh, I don't want to be a wise one. I want to carry my spears and kill people with spears. Shut up. And that romance scene in the middle, that was bad romance even for Robert Jordan standards, and he's bad. But anyway, back to the chase. Just seeing Rand just completely lose it, and seeing this Forsaken, who, by the way, Ravine, completely wasted villain, most wasted potential I've ever seen in a Forsaken. Just see him go up to him and just start chasing him like T-1000 in Terminator 2. Oh, it was so good. Honestly, the Morghese plotline, like, why? What's the point? I also want to point out the setup for the Rebel Aes Sedai it just felt like it was tacked on. But yeah, that's my review for Fires of Heaven. This was a big step down for me from Shadow Rising. I give it like a 6 out of 10. All right, let's talk about Lord of Chaos. Yeah, I'm going to be honest here. The prologues here was just... It was long, but this was like the first time you could really tell that Robert Jordan's writing was starting to go downhill. Like, why was that prologue so long? Like, it feels like he got all the necessary information he couldn't fit into the main story and just threw them into the prologue, and some of it we just don't need. Like the introduction of Demondred, Masana, and Semirog, and the revival of Aginor and Balthamel, that was cool. And the setup of the Rebel Aes Sedai sending emissaries and the Tower Aes Sedai sending emissaries to Rand, that was great. And the setup of Dumai's Wells, that was great. Why did it need to be like 70 pages? You could have cut it down to like 15. But yeah, jumping back to the main story, Rand, he's really starting to lose it here. And also the introduction of Taim, that was a really like cool setup for what at the time people thought was Demondred. Like, just this guy who gives off bad vibes, and you know something's up, but you can't put your finger on it. That was a great introduction to him. I also just have to say this: if you're gonna set up the Black Tower and just like this place of male channelers, and you're not gonna give them a plot line throughout the rest of the books, why would you just allude to them in the prologues? I do have to say this though, Rand jumps around way too much in this book. He jumps from Carrion to Camelin to Shadar Logoth to Tyr. He jumps around so much. And I will say the chapter where he goes to Shadar Logoth with the Aiel, it's like a big way to know, like, wow, look how far we've come. Last time he was here, he was terrified out of his balls, but here he's a lot more capable. And the Rebel Aes Sedai plotline, like up until Matt gets there, it just felt like this giant heap of nothing. And what I mean by nothing happens, it's like the Tower Aes Sedai emissary comes down, Nynaeve spies on them, and they're just setting up Egwene being the false Amyrlin. Like, that's it. I will say, Matt really starts to come into his own in this book here. Like, he's starting to really become the Matt Coffin that I fell in love with. I will say this, the moment where Egwene was actually raised to the Amyrlin just came out of absolutely nowhere. Like, when did the reader / Egwene earn this? But anyway, the moment where she's all flustered and everyone's telling her, like, you're just a false Amyrlin, you're just a puppet, that all the POV work in these books is perfect. Now regarding that battle at the end, it was good, but I feel like people only love it for the 2 lines that are said in the battle. They're good, don't get me wrong, but it feels like people only love it for those. Like, I feel like you could have said this, you could have put the Ashaman in Carrion, and they would have said that, and it would have been great. And I'm just going to get this out of the way right now. The Shido should have ended at this book. Like, the moment where they run away after seeing the Ashaman, that should have been the end of them. They should not have been in the story later after that. Overall, it was good. Felt like it was the longest book too. All right, let's talk about Crown of Swords. Okay, so again, the prologue's just It's like, it's okay, but the only like major detail you need to know is Elida and what's going on in the White Tower. Like, that's the only thing you needed to know in the prologue. And plus, those opening chapters, why were those opening chapters, like, you could have took like those first 4, I think, and smushed them all into one, maybe 2. I will also say, I think this is the book where you can really tell that Robert Jordan doesn't know what to do with Perrin at this point, because in those chapters that he has here, outside of one, all you could tell is that he's like, oh, Fael, I wonder what's going on with Fael. And even when he's sent off to Gildon, it just feels like Robert Jordan being like, okay, go do this. Like, it's Robert Jordan telling Perrin to do something. But anyway, the Ebu Dar plotline here, I'm going to be honest, I thought I would hate the Ebu Dar plotline. I loved it. Like, this dynamic of Matt, Nynaeve, and Elaine, and Nynaeve and Elaine are off trying to find the Bowl of the Winds, and Matt wants to help them, but the girls keep refusing. Then eventually, Matt and Brigitte get drunk, and eventually they kind of are forced to help now. It's great. The introduction of Oliver, I really wish that Oliver got a little bit more like time. He's kind of like a side character, and I don't really think that's the worst part. It just feels like he's kind of the thing that Matt needs. It's like Matt's whole character arc is not necessarily him growing, it's just him, just a bunch of responsibility being pushed onto him and seeing how he reacts. And I feel like Oliver should have been like the most important one, because it's a child. And what's more responsibility than taking care of a child? And Tylan and Matt, moving on. Actually, I do have one thing to say. If you think that that was funny or good, you need to be put on a watch list. For Rand's plotline, it was fine. The only like major things I can think of that happened were like he duels Fane and he just basically sends a woman off to her death. Like, it's just a lot of filler. And I think this is the point where it starts to slowly decline in quality here. I want to talk about the endings, because there's 2 to the plot lines I think are okay. The first one in the Ebu Dar plot line I thought was great. They're going to set up, they're going to go activate the Bowl of the Winds outside of the city with the kin. And the kin, great job of world building. Like, what did these failed accepteds do? That was great. But they go out there, and Matt is going to stay by, and eventually the Shan-Chan attack, oh my god, and the wall falls on his face, and that's it. That was a great ending. The ending of Rand's plotline could have been a lot better. And I say that because his fight with Samael is really bad, because I don't like Samael as a villain. I think is a really bad villain. And the fight itself was just like it's really problematic to me. Very problematic. Overall, like a 6, maybe even a 5. Yeah, I think the Wheel of Time just hit a low point with this series. Like these next 3 books are just they're not good. And you can tell but that it's not that good. Like the prologue, I'm just going to skip over it. It's not that good. It's not worth talking about. It could have been cut. The first 5 chapters is just bickering. Like 5 straight chapters of the Kin, Nynaeve, and I think Avienda just bickering, and Avienda, I guess, almost sets off a bomb. Like, that's it. Now, going on to like Egwene's plotline, it's even worse because like 2 things happen. She's trying to assert her authority as the real Amerlin seat to some nobles in Andor. The rebel Aes Sedai catch her, and they're gonna put her on trial, and eventually they're gonna get her in trouble until eventually Egwene just declares war on Elida. And all of that was like 8 chapters, I think, when all of that could have been boiled down to 3. This is like 33 chapters too. This book is 33 chapters. I will say here, Perrin's plotline in this book, I don't think it's bad, but it really sours it when you learn that Robert Jordan just doesn't know what to do with him. So he just kind of sent him off on this side quest, and now it's just, okay. Also, the ending of Perrin's plotline, no. Just no. Now, regarding Rand's plotline, I'm going to be honest, the only good thing in this entire book is in Rand's plotline, and it's the chapter A Time for Iron. When he just brings Kalendor and just lays down lightning on him and the Shan Chan's army, that's the only good thing that happens in this book. And no Matt. No, Matt is not in this book, and that really hurts it. This is like a 5 out of 10. It's barely good. Oh boy, it's just getting worse. Alright, starting off with the opening chapters. Oh my god, Fail's been kidnapped by the Shido! Like, I would rather have Perrin cut out of this whole story than just have him do nothing. And these next 3 books is where he's just gonna be searching for his wife and do absolutely nothing outside of like maybe 3 things. And here, I couldn't tell you what he did. I could not tell you a single thing of what Perrin just did in this book. I will say, Elias coming back was fun. That's like the only good thing though. Rand and formatting just... I think this was the only Rand plotline that I actively did not like. And it sucks because it's got such a great setup. This boy who's relied on channeling so much, and when he goes to a city where he can't do it, and just seeing the anxiety inside of him, it's a great idea, but it's so boring. The moment before where he was meeting with his love interest, that was cute. Also, it's got the start of my absolute least favorite plotline in this whole series, Elaine's Game of Thrones plotline. Woo! Just absolute thumbs. If I had 10 thumbs, all of them would be down for Elaine's plotline. It's so slow. It doesn't add anything to the story. Elaine doesn't add anything to this story in this book. Even the battle at the end of this, while it's important, don't get me wrong, it felt way too complicated. Like, it jumps between POVs like over 30 times in this, and it's so hard to keep track of. And one thing I hate about this series is the names and the amount of factions there are, and you don't know who's in what faction unless you're not keeping track of it. So you're going into this battle and you're like, wait, who did what? Who bail-fired that person? Now regarding, and I also want to talk about Matt's plotline, because this is the only like okay one. It's Matt meeting up with his destined wife, and while his plan to escape is a little complicated and way too confusing, it's okay. Also the introduction of Noel. I love Noel. I will say, if you're gonna make me, like, it's clear Robert Jordan was trying to make us like Tuon, and probably, if he did finish this series, I do think Tuon would be in a similar, like, character as, like, Zuko. Like, we hated this guy at first, but by the end of the show, we ended up loving him. I feel like she would have been in a similar place at that point, but then Brandon Sanderson came in and just reversed that. Like, so again, a lot of the plot lines here are really bad. The only good one is just okay. And the ending at the battle at the end of this is just, I think it's too confusing. This is like a 4.5 out of 5. 4.5 out of 10, sorry. And we've reached the absolute low point of this series. Oh, good lord. Like this, I swear, this book is so slow paced that I would rather eat the pages myself and just consume it that way than have to read this book again. It is so slow paced. And the last 3 were already slower. This is a snail's crawl. And I'll be honest, pacing doesn't bother me when it comes to anything, but it does bother me when there's almost nothing that happens in this book. 3/4 of this book is filler. 3/4 of this book could have been cut out and the story wouldn't have changed. Like, Perrin's plotline here it's actually okay, but it's so soured by the fact that it's in this. Like, him chopping off that Shido's hand, it's a great moment. It would have been amazing if this was in a good book. I also just have to say that Fail's chapters trying to escape the Shido, why were those there? Because you could skip those chapters and you would miss absolutely nothing. They don't add anything to the story. The Shido have no purpose in this story at all at this point. You could cut them out completely and you'd miss nothing. Rand's plot line, where he just has like, I think 2 chapters in this, And Elaine's plot line, thumbs down. 4 million thumbs down, actually. Nothing happens. Nothing happens in that plot line at all. Now, Egwene's plot line, where she's actually trying with the rebel Aes Sedai, people say it's the only time that they were interested in it. I was not. Like, there's just, and what's funny is that in book 8, there was the setup of war, and it just changed her mind. Like, what the fuck? Why would you set up war and then just change your mind? It just makes this book worse. And the ending, where Egwene just goes up, makes the chain into adamantium, Quaindiar, whatever, and getting caught. Like, I'm supposed to take this girl seriously as the Amaryllis Seat, and she's making mistakes like this. This is bad. This is the worst book in the Wheel of Time. 3 out of 10. Well, this is finally the Wheel of Time that I've been asking for. I will say, this prologue opens with a fucking boom. Galad slowly creeping up towards Eamon Valda, wanting to duel him for assaulting his mom. Oh, it's so good. Everything else in the prologue didn't need to be there. But moving on. So, regarding Elaine's plotline, I'm just going to get out of the way. It's the only time that I was actually somewhat interested in it. Like, she gets kidnapped, and Brigitte has to save her. Ugh. Woo, that's it. And she's the Queen of Andor, yay! I think the real meat of this book, though, is Egwene being a prisoner in the White Tower. I thought that was the real meat of this story. That was fantastic. This woman being raised to such a high power in both the story and in the books that she's just brought back to where she was in like book 2. Ooh. And all the Aes Sedai that hate her are just like slowly bullying her and picking on her, and she's just snapping back, doing it absolutely perfectly. Oh, Matt's plotline, it's like I feel like Matt gets a lot of character development with Tuon, you know? Like this boy who's been out flirting with every woman he sees, drinking beer, and he actually has a woman that he really does like, and he wants to take care of her. That setup where they were going to go rescue Moraine from the Tower of Genji, I don't understand why you would have to wait 2 books for that, but that's just my opinion. That's just me. I know some people love it. Now, Perrin's plot line, it's basically just him being intercut with other characters and all that stuff, and it's good. It's just him being set up for battle, the battle with the Shido, which again, why are they in this book? But the battle itself, everyone was hyping it up to be great. I thought it was just okay. The battle after that, though, that was great. Just Matt finally being this commander and Tuon actually taking him seriously instead of just seeing him as this clown. It was so great. And the fucking cannons got used. And it was so awesome. It's amazing, but it just feels really clunky and so out of place. I give this like a 6.5. It's great, but for like the last book that Robert Jordan wrote, I think it was, I don't think I wish he would have ended this with Gathering Storm, because that's where he should have ended this. Also, that last epilogue, I want to know people's thoughts on that when they came out, just because that would have made me so angry to know that Taim is a Forsaken and not know what they're going to do with that. that would have pissed me off. You know what's funny? I think the Wheel of Time peaked at the end of this book. What I mean by that is the ending of this book is so good and so well done. It could have worked as an ending for the whole series. Like, yeah, the last battle's coming, but if we just ignored that and just went with the ending of this book, it would have worked amazingly. Like, I believe Rand's arc is finished in this book. He didn't need more character development in 2 and 3, or 13 and 14. I just gotta say, Cadsuane and Cimarog, why? Like, the spanking scenes were already bad. That was particularly bad. It was so stupid, and just, I couldn't take it seriously. Now this, I think I said Egwene's plotline in the last video was, like, really good. Here, I think is where it's, like, peaked. It is so good. It is so amazing. Egwene actually being seen as the true Amerlin that she is. And her calling Elida a fucking pussy, a coward, and just a bad Amerlin. Oh, it was so good. Perrin existed in this book, and I guess Matt went to a zombie city. That was great though, but I don't know why it was here. This is Rand and Egwene's book. They are the top characters in this book because Rand has completely lost it by this point. And even Nynaeve, like, you could tell by her voice that she wants Rand al'Thor. She doesn't want the Dragon Reborn. She wants her little brother figure back. There's even a moment where she's like, I wish Moiraine was here. And the fact that Nynaeve fucking despised her in the early books and now she's calling for her. Oh, it's so amazing. And also the Battle of Tarvalon, that I was waiting for this book. It was set up in book 3. I was waiting for it and I was not disappointed. Egwene climbing to the top of the White Tower just to finally just smack all of these Rockin' and Toe Rockin', and you can see it on the cover right here. Oh my gosh, it was so good. To me, this peaked with Veins of Gold. That whole chapter was perfect. All of this madness and all of this, like, insanity that Rand has been dealing with for books all just fluttered away. Or he just accepted his position and is actually insane, but he just doesn't act insane. This was one of the best books in the series outside of the Shadow Rising. 9.5 out of 10. Amazing. There's a reason I chose this cover. This is Perrin's book. This is Perrin's book. He gets the most character development. And you know how Sanderson is known for Sanderlanches? He gets a Sanderlanche of character development. Like, for the past 8 books, I think, he's just been completely nothing, no character development, just him worrying about his wife and just going off on these random side quests. And then Brandon Sanderson came in and wrote this amazing plot line for him. And it's so damn well written. And the scene where he forges that hammer, one of the best scenes in the entire series. Better than Tarmangaiden, almost as good as Veins of Gold. Oh, it's so good. Matt also gets a great plot line in this, but I don't think it hits like the high highs as Perrin's does. Because to me, it feels like Matt was going on this slow trajectory upwards. Perrin was just on this flat line and then just peaked. And that peak was this book. And him and Matt saying, I will give up half the light of the world. I think that's where he really became the Matt Coffin that we know of. I will say Rand's plotline in this just felt kind of unneeded. Like I said before in my last video, I think his arc is finished with Gathering Storm. I don't think he needed more development here. And plus, it just feels like he's just being Jesus. Like, it was fine, but I don't think it was needed. Perrin and Matt, top characters in this. Egwene, oh, how you've fallen. When you took that stole, you became so unlikable and so bitchy and so arrogant. You just dropped. And also Gawain, I don't get the hate that Gawain gets. I don't get it. Like, why do people hate him? Why? Is it just because he's a douchebag? Is that why? Because if you say that about him, you got to say the same about Galad. And I love Galad. This book also turned me around to Galad. That speech he gave in the prologue, that hit. Also just got to say, that epilogue, while I do not remember hearing about what Aiel do with male channelers, that was a great little twist. This was an amazing book. Like, I plan to read more Brandon Sanderson, but so far, this is my favorite Brandon Sanderson book. 10 out of 10. Masterpiece. So I do have one critique. I don't like all the interconnecting plot lines and how much they cross over. I wish they were all separate. Memory of Light, the Last Wheel of Time book. I'm gonna be honest. I wasn't the biggest fan of like the opening few chapters. It was good, but it's just like eh. It was very slow paced compared to the rest of them. Like the last four were like lightning pace, but this just felt like more of the pacing of the earlier books, which not I don't hate it, but it was noticeable. I also just gotta say this. Why the hell is Andril here? And who is he? That should have been Logain. Like, why just throw in this random Ashaman we've never met to do all this cool shit when Logain was very clearly being set up to be like the successor of the Black Tower? What was the point? Now I want to say one thing about like the meeting that they had in like the 1/3 mark, I'd say. When Moraine came out, that should have been Rand. Because in Fires of Heaven, she died. Or at least that's what everyone thought. And Rand kept blaming himself for it. And just seeing this woman come out and like it should have been him. We should have seen his emotions and not Perrin's. Now I do want to say one thing about this. All of the battles before the actual last battle chapter, they were, I know they were supposed to be like kind of chaotic, but they could have been a little bit more controlled. Like it feels like you're just going from one to another and then another and just also lands chapters in Tarwin's Gap. Okay. I don't know why that was there. Now onto the actual last battle itself, the chapters and the chapters afterward. Despite how long that was, it was surprisingly well paced and surprisingly smooth. Like you have a very clear picture of what's going on, who everyone is doing, what's everyone's battling, and all that stuff. And Egwene's death. I don't like Egwene, and I didn't like Egwene at this point in the story, but it hurt. Also, his battle with the Dark One, I think that was the best way you could have done it. Not an actual duel, but just a talk of philosophy over some coffee is how I pictured it. That was good. I wish I could read that again. And also his speech, "Here is your flaw, Shaitan." That was the best. I will say there's not a whole lot of character development, just one giant battle. But still, I enjoyed it. Great ending. Best ending, by the way. Like, this is one of the best endings to a series I've seen in a while. I give this like a 7, 8 out of 10. No, I give it an 8 out of 10.